In Appalachia, if you're out in the wilderness and something calls your name, it already knows you. And I'm going to tell you why answering it might invite something into your life. This is one of the most, I think, underrated or overlooked unwritten Appalachian rule, and that is you never answer when something calls your name while you're out in the wilderness. And this actually is pretty common. I know people who've experienced this. I have not heard anything call my name, but I have heard things talking, voices when there were no other people around. But people always ask me, why should you not answer if something or someone calls your name? There's a couple things you have to consider. Now, if you're with someone, a group of friends, or a spouse, whoever it may be, and they call your name, that's different. I'm talking about when you're out in the wilderness, usually alone, and you hear something or someone call your name. More often than not, it sounds familiar. It sounds like someone you know. It may sound like a spouse, a relative, a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, but they will call your name. Usually they sound like they're in distress, like they need help. Also, it's just close enough to where it sounds that you can hear, but it's like it's trying to lead you further into the wilderness, further away from civilization. Now, what is that? There's a lot of different names for the creatures in Appalachia, and as far as that goes, around the world. I believe, if you guys have watched many of my videos, that at the end of the day, these creatures are all one and the same. They're demons. They wear a different mask. They will appear as whatever is necessary to deceive you. I always use the reference, it's like the old Scooby-Doo cartoons when they finally catch the villain at the end of the cartoon and they pull off a mask only to reveal another mask. I think that's what's going on. But, all that aside, what is the thing calling your name? Most people believe that even though at its core it's a demon, it's what we would think a mimic. A mimic is something, a creature, entity, that will always impersonate a person. Usually someone you know, a familiar voice, because if you hear a stranger's voice out in the wilderness, you're more likely to ignore it because you don't know, it could be someone who's crazy just trying to lure you deeper into the forest. But if it's a voice you know, a mother's voice or a child's voice or your spouse's voice, you're going to go looking for it. And it's never going to lead you toward civilization. It's never going to take you near a house or a road. It's going to lead you deeper and deeper. Right when you think you've got to the point where you should have now found the voice, you'll hear it further away. Further and further and further into the darkness. What is their end game? No one really knows, because those who have, I guess, succumbed to whatever these creatures' end game is aren't around to talk about it. Ultimately, I think it would be is to lead you deep enough to the wilderness, you get lost, no one ever finds you, you more or less just fall victim to weather, no food, water, shelter. But I don't know, that's just an assumption. Many people throughout Appalachia fear the mimic more than any other entity because it is so deceiving. If you see a ghost, which again I think is demonic at its core, you kind of know what it is. Okay, that's a ghost, whether it's a demon or not. That's someone who once was alive and is now dead, or that's a demon pretending to be a spirit of a deceased person. Or you see a Bigfoot, you see a dog man or some type of cryptid. You might not believe what you're seeing, but you know essentially what you're seeing. You've seen enough pictures on YouTube, Facebook, TV, what Bigfoot looks like. But a mimic, no one really knows the true form. Some people think that these entities, these mimics, don't just sound like people you know. They can also look like someone you know, which adds a whole new extra layer of creepiness. Because if you think you see someone you know just a little further into the forest, and they're screaming your name, you're going to go look. Here's how you avoid falling victim to these things. If you're out in the wilderness, but I will also include mimics can appear pretty much anywhere, homes, houses, wherever, but I think in the mountains, deep in the wilderness, is where they thrive. If you're in a situation where you're out, say in Appalachia, whatever you're doing, hiking, hunting, and you hear this, you really need to ask yourself, okay, that sounds like my sister. That sounds like my brother, but my brother or sister, they're not here. They're not with me. Or if you see what looks like someone that looks like my spouse off in the distance, natural instinct, I should go toward them. But if they should not be there, don't. That's not to say that there aren't creepy, crazy people running around in places. Sure, that happens. That's reason enough. Or if you're in an area and you know there's a missing person, a child or adult, and you hear someone screaming for help, I'm not saying you should ignore that. Contact the first responders, 911, let them know. If none of that is going on, you really need to ignore it. Now, there's a few more of these Appalachian rules that kind of fall under the same category as this one, like why you don't look behind you if you're walking through the forest at night and you hear footsteps. Now, if there's people with you, obviously you're going to hear footsteps, but if they're not, many people believe that you should never look over your shoulder to see what's behind you. I'll get into that in more videos. Mimics, however, are encountered pretty much all over the world. Not just the United States, not just Appalachia. I have heard stories literally from pretty much every continent almost of mimics. They're deceivers. And we know from the Bible what God calls deceivers, liars, demons, the devil, Satan himself. He is a liar and the father of it. And so are his minions. And they're out here roaming around Appalachia and beyond looking for people to manipulate. A lot of people, when they think of demon, they think of some entity with horns and a pitchfork. That's not how demons work. They don't appear in their true form, because if everyone knew demons exist, then that must mean God exists. They just blur the lines. They just confuse enough to get you off course. If you're out in the mountains and you hear a familiar voice, you're going to go looking for that person. You're going to go further and further and further until you are lost. Or maybe you don't have a flashlight and can't find your way back out. And again, what is their end game? I don't know. But ultimately, it's not good. If it's nothing more than just cause confusion, they'll do that. Anything to get you off course from where you should be physically and spiritually off course. You have to stay vigilant. There are things in the mountains, there are animals in the mountains that can sound like people sometimes. Mountain lions, their scream sounds like women, or some people say children. So you have to stay aware of those natural predators, but it's the unnatural predators that really scare me. There's a tangible object, a physical flesh and blood creature, person, thing, that thing can be hurt. If it's spiritual, it can be hurt, but in a different way. You have to know what you're up against. You have to know what you can use to defend yourself. And that is the Word of God. That is truth. That is knowing what you're up against. So let me know, have you ever encountered a mimic? Have you been out in the mountains, wherever you may live, or in the wilderness, or maybe even at your home? Some people say they are sitting at home at times and they will hear a voice come from another room. That's a familiar voice. It sounds like one of their children or husband or wife, but it's not. Have you ever encountered that? I want to know in the comments. And what Appalachian rule do you want me to cover next? Please hit that like button, turn on all notifications, and subscribe. That's the best way you can support me and my channel. I plan on bringing more stories just like this soon, and some more paranormal investigations where I go out into the mountains of Appalachia and haunted houses and buildings throughout, and I bring you guys with me. You can also follow me over on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook as The Supernatural Sleuth, and you can email me any story, picture, or video that you might have at thesupernaturalsleuth@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much. Have a great and blessed day. See you soon.